Welcome into the Fantasy Football Forge. My name is Steve, and it is time for the Week 16 rankings. Most of you in the semifinals if you are watching this video, so congratulations to you. If you didn't make your playoffs or anything and you're still watching, much appreciated. Don't forget to drop a like, that very much helps. Of course, as always, oh my gosh, playing spoiler over here. Hopefully you didn't get too much of a glimpse for the surprise factor. But as always, I will be going through in tiers the order of my rankings, as well as, we're going to do both the quarterback and the tight end. So I'm doing things on the screen, trying to multitask with the brain there. And before we get to the rankings for each position, I will go through how I did last week with my DFS buys of the week. I will give you new buys for each position when I finish the position, the rankings for the position. And with that, once again, just thank you very much for, I think, quite a successful season here for this channel. So it's very much appreciated. Growth has been good. And it's awesome. Also, don't forget you can find the rankings for all of the positions up on the website, www.theFFforge.com. All the positions should be up there by Wednesday evening. If not, they'll be up there by Thursday morning. And without further ado, how did I do with my DFS buys last week for the quarterback position? I said that you could spend up on Lamar Jackson at 7,700. And I thought that he had quarterback one upside. He finished 9th amongst quarterbacks in regular 4-point per touchdown scoring formats. So probably wasn't quite worth that the bang for the buck there wasn't there. At a mid-price, I said Matt Stafford at 6,000 DK bucks would be worth it. On the main slate, he finished 6th, so that's solid. I think he would have been a value. And for a contrarian play, I thought that Patrick Mahomes at $7,800 could be a solid contrarian play. He was used, I believe he did probably essentially count as a contrarian play. He finished 4th on the main slate, so that is good for where he finished. You could have gotten some better values, though, especially last week. Then I didn't, a week where I give you, I think every other week I've given you a bargain bin quarterback. The one week where I didn't go down into the bargain bin was the week where they all went off. So I almost certainly would have been correct if I went down there and gave you a name, but I didn't. And maybe part of that reason was because there were so many that were kind of like, guys who have been playing well. I don't know if I made any comment to that. Then for my loves and my fades last week, for my love I gave you Matt Stafford. He finished with 18.5 fantasy points, so he didn't do too bad. Not as good as you would hope either. And I did express some concerns for Matt Stafford as well. But for my fade, I gave you Jared Goff, who was the best quarterback on the week. So, whoops. So that's going to kick off the quarterbacks here with our first tier, Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts. I'm not sitting them for nobody. There you can see the projections on the screen, of course, lower end, higher end, above average, below average is essentially how to think of that range. And you can see the defense that they're playing against this week over on the far right. Red is good, blue is bad, white is neutral for all of these columns that are highlighted. So that's going to bring us to this second tier. Several tight tiers to start this off. Starting off at quarterback 3 is Lamar Jackson, followed by Brock Purdy and Dak Prescott at quarterback 5 to wrap up this little tier. And believe me, I get it. If you want to play Dak Prescott over Brock Purdy, over Lamar Jackson, if you have any of those pairings, go right ahead. I don't mind that. The argument for him against Miami this week is, of course, beyond the fact that he's been great in fantasy, the fact that we're expecting a shootout between Dallas and Miami. I do believe that Baltimore-San Francisco game for Lamar Jackson and Brock Purdy also has a good chance, a similar chance ultimately, of becoming a shootout. Not quite as high of a chance, not as likely, but with a 46-point over-under, DraftKings also believes that could become a shootout and is expecting points to be scored. So I'm taking the floor of Lamar Jackson in this instance, and I'm taking the better fantasy quarterback on the season in Brock Purdy over Dak by the slimmest of margins. All three of these guys very tight in that tier like them all quite a bit. Let's move on to my third tier, which is also going to be a grouping of three. Starts off at quarterback 6 with Justin Fields going down to my quarterback 8. Jared Goff with Patrick Mahomes stuck right in the middle. And as far as Fields go, he's playing up against Arizona. So to me, it's going to be pretty tough to sit him in that kind of matchup. Then we got Patrick Mahomes going up against Las Vegas. And the team, Kansas City, came out flat versus Las Vegas the last time that they played them this season. And especially after Las Vegas just blew up last week, overall just scoring a lot of points, obviously, I would not expect for Kansas City to take this game lightly, and I would expect them to come out of the gate hopefully fired up. So that's what I'm banking on. Then Jared Goff here at quarterback 8. Minnesota, the opponent, has a good run defense, which I think works in favor of Jared Goff in this passing offense to have a bigger day. Of course, last week I thought the running game would have a big day, and that was why I was concerned about Jared Goff and faded him. So you just never know in the NFL, but I do my best. I do my best based on what we got, and sometimes it just doesn't go as expected. At my tier 4 here starts off with Kyler Murray at quarterback 9, going all the way to CJ Stroud at quarterback 13. So another smaller tier here. This is good. This means I'm confident in what we're seeing and confident in these tiers usually when they're smaller like this. As far as Kyler Murray, he is my fade of the week. And for this tier, it really depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for a ceiling, which I tend normally, not always, it kind of depends how likely that ceiling is to happen as well. But in this case, I'm going to favor it over what I think is a very safe player in Baker Mayfield. So that's where I have Kyler Murray ranked ahead of Baker Mayfield. But if you're just looking for the guaranteed points, you have a good team, good roster, you can't risk having your quarterback put up 10 points, then just go with Baker Mayfield. And that is obviously the concern for Kyler Murray this week. Going up against Chicago, that offense just hasn't looked very good at all so far this season with Kyler. And so there's a high chance of a bust potential here. Chicago's defense has played quite well, especially as of late. So it's not a walkover kind of game or anything, despite Chicago's record overall. Then we've got Tua and Matt Stafford. Once again, we're going for the ceiling here, and Tua going up against Dallas. I already talked about that. We expect that to probably be a shootout, if anything, and so that's where you're seeing this deeper red here for the matchup gauge. And for Matt Stafford, once again, we're going into, I do think that he is a safer play. I have confidence in that offense here going forward. Is a bit of a tough matchup, not as tough of a matchup than Dallas is for Tua. And, Another thing for Tua against him, we just saw last week, to beat Dallas, the game plan was to use James Cook a lot, to run a lot, to just use the running back a lot. And so Miami could easily see that and copy that blueprint this week, which would mean, once again, less of a chance of Tua having a big day. Then CJ Stroud in at quarterback 13 there. CJ Stroud just dips behind this whole group. He did project, I think, better than all of them. But not having Tank Dell and the fact that he's going to be playing up against Cleveland, once again, a really, really tough matchup against this group, has just caused him to slip down for me. You can see the projections do like him better than two of the guys that I have him ranked behind there. So that's what the projections are saying. And I just want to make it clear that I am far from fading CJ Stroud. I'd be happy to play him over any of these guys if you have the confidence in him as well. That's, part of a tier is that oftentimes you can mix them up however you want, and that's fine. It's whatever. Let's move on to the 5th tier here. It starts off at quarterback 14, another smaller tier, going up to quarterback 18. Joe Flacco there to finish this tier off. And to begin this tier, we got Jordan Love at quarterback 14, and this was nearly a fade for me going up against the Carolina Panthers. It's almost always a matchup that doesn't really offer much of a ceiling, as teams typically run a lot on them. The silver lining here for me and why I am confidently putting Jordan Love at my quarterback 14 spot is that Green Bay Packers don't really have much of a rushing game at this point in the season, and so I'm expecting them to still have to go to the air plenty in order to beat Carolina, and that obviously bodes well for the passing attack, which goes through Jordan Love. Before going on to talking about Russell Wilson and Geno Smith here, I just want to mention for Jake Browning here, a love of the week for me, going up against Pittsburgh. I do want to nominate as well. Joe Flacco is a co-love for me this week going up against Houston. I'm almost regretting going with Jake Browning because Jamar Chase is going to be missing. That might hurt the game plan a little bit, might make them lean on the run a little bit more. Pittsburgh's not great against the run. Joe Flacco, definitely nominated here as a love of the week, maybe even more so than Jake Browning, now that I think about it more and state that, and we look at the matchup gauge. But either way, both of these guys, if you want to start them over, not CJ Stroud, but Jordan Love, Russell Wilson, Geno Smith, you have my blessing. Go right ahead and do it. Totally understand it. And let's move on to Russell Wilson at quarterback 15. This is quite literally just who Russell Wilson has been on the season, quarterback 15. And for Geno Smith, he kind of moves up ahead of these guys just based on name notoriety, decent enough matchup against Tennessee, putting some faith on it. But, I don't necessarily love it over these two. And I do want to say, as far as Cincinnati goes against Pittsburgh, I do think that they'll be able to move the ball still. So that's why I'm still not just going to outright change my love. We're just going to make it Joe Flacco and Jake Browning, and Kitty Cat is being obnoxious. Let's move on to my 6th tier here, which is going to go all the way down to quarterback 24. And these 6 are not a far cry from that 5th tier ultimately. I would not feel bad about having to play any of them this week. And a little bit about them, starting off at quarterback 19, Gardner Minshew. Well, he's just been solid so far this season, but there's not a whole lot of upside in that matchup against Atlanta. Then we've got Tommy DeVito. He is in a high upside matchup against Philadelphia there, and his legs also offer him a solid floor, as you can see. So I'm banking on at least one of those coming through this week. Then we've got Sam Howell, who has been better than this on the season, better than the quarterback 21. And the silver lining for him is that the Jets defense may be just over it by now. They might not be trying so hard. Then we've got Nick Mullins in at quarterback 22. Seemingly he had a fluky performance last week, but Detroit has been a solid matchup and one that he could take advantage of, and it's a divisional matchup. These teams know each other quite well, so game plan could always be there. Derek Carr in at quarterback 23, and he's coming off his best match of the season in a matchup that maintains a decent floor for him going up against Los Angeles Rams, maybe not the highest of upside. And CJ Beathard going up against Tampa Bay. It is a good matchup, and Beathard is not the world's worst backup at quarterback, and Tampa Bay's secondary can be had. So I do have some faith in CJ Beathard to keep this Jacksonville offense afloat in this matchup. And then there's the rest of the quarterbacks. Obviously, I am not currently ranking Case Keenum. I am currently ranking C.J. Stroud if he's going to go. He has not passed concussion protocol to my knowledge as of the time of filming this. And Trevor Lawrence is not being ranked either. He is in concussion protocol, and the expectation would be that he will not get out of it in time for this weekend. And my DFS buys of the week, I'm spending up on Justin Fields at $7,100, not too expensive anyways. At a mid-price, even a cheaper option here, Baker Mayfield for 6,000 DK bucks. Contrarian play, I'm going to give you 2 of them, and I actually... no, that's going to be the tight ends. But for the contrarian play, I do give you 2 here. Brock Purdy at $6,800 and Sam Howell at $6,200 will both probably be used fairly lightly due to their matchups, so that's why I'm thinking that they fit the contrarian play mold here. I can almost certainly say Sam Howell probably will. Brock Purdy, I don't know how much people will be afraid of the matchup or not for him at that price. And in the bargain bin, going all the way down to $5K, is Tommy DeVito. Once again, banking on the feet and or that matchup coming through for him this week in hopefully a better game than last week. And he's also probably a contrarian play. So let's move on to the tight ends. And for last week, for my DFS lineups, players that I gave you, good buys, I gave you David Njoku at $4,700. Absolutely nailed that one. I think that he actually outscored Sam Laporta on DK by fractions of a point from what I can tell. Wasn't able to see for sure. I don't know if that's available somewhere to actually see the outputs from the previous week on DK. Let me know. Where? Then in the discount bin, I said that Logan Thomas at $3,700 would be worth a try. I failed that one. And on the contrarian play, I gave you Trey McBride at $5,200 due to the bad matchup. I thought people would avoid him. He was still used fairly heavily, like 11%, but he was used less than others as well, so it kind of worked out as contrarian play. He finished as the tight end 3 on the week with 23.2 fantasy points. And for my love of the week, it was David Njoku. So that was a good call. And for my fade of the week, it was Hunter Henry. That was a bad call. Let's move on to the first tier of tight ends here. From tight ends 1 through 4, it's going to be Travis Kelce, Trey McBride, Sam Laporta, TJ Hawkinson. You're starting them if you got them. This is the order that I'm saying you're starting them. But if you want to start one of them over Travis Kelce, you don't trust him, go right ahead. Or, use one of them in your flex. It's fine. I'd say TJ Hawkinson's the one that we might have the least hope for out of this bunch. So really, I don't recommend playing TJ over Travis Kelce. But Sam Laporta, Trey McBride, go right ahead if your heart so desires. I got no problem with that. Then we're going to move on to this second tier of tight ends, if I can get them to pull down. A little group of three here: David Njoku, George Kittle, Evan Ingram. Also pretty much must-starts here. The only reason that Ingram isn't ahead of Kittle is due to the fact that it will be C.J. Beathard, but especially for full PPR purposes, the hope is always when those backup quarterbacks come in that maybe they'll rely on the tight end, and Evan Ingram is going to be one of the better, easier options to throw to in that offense next week, with Christian Kirk still being out. And then we're going to move on to this third tier of tight ends, starting off with Jake Ferguson in at tight end number 8. He's going up against Miami. There could be a lot of opportunities in what we expect to be potentially a shootout yet again. Isaiah Likely in at tight end number 9, and there's no denying that he has been absolutely fantastic. The way to score points against San Francisco, fantasy points, is via a lot of receptions. They usually don't allow a whole lot of yards after reception, etc. And the expectation for receptions in this Baltimore offense is only about 6. That's right about where he's been hovering. So I'm not too optimistic about him this week. But as I said, he has been fantastic. Part of that a little bit fluky. But every player at this point in the season has had some fluky plays work in their favor, or at least a lot of them. So, lot to like about Likely. That wasn't really done on purpose there. Then at quarterback tight end 10, we've got Cole Kmet and Arizona. The opponent there is not technically a good tight end matchup, but I will still take the number 2 target for Justin Fields in a game that we are expecting good things from that Bears offense against that Arizona defense. So I like the opportunities at tight end at number 11. We've got Darren Waller, obviously receiving a love tag from me this week going up against Philadelphia. He came back last week, his first week back, and he got 6 targets right off the bat. So that is promising to me. And this Philadelphia defense did look like they possibly improved with the new defensive coordinator for much of the game on Monday night. However, at the end of the game, of course, we saw that they did allow the go-ahead touchdown, almost go-ahead. But it's hard to say that that's for sure. They were going up against Drew Lock, and that Seattle offense hasn't been great all season necessarily, or at least not for fantasy purposes. But it was Drew Lock heading that offense. So I'm going to take the chance on Darren Waller here. I think that he has top 3 tight end upside going up against Philadelphia this week, being the best pass catcher on that offense. And Tommy DeVito's a smart guy. Then we've got Dalton Kincaid in at tight end 12, and I warned you about the return of Dawson Knox, but I'm not giving up on Kincaid that easily in such a good tight end matchup going against the Chargers. I like that matchup. And at tight end 13, Dallas Goedert obviously receiving a fade tag from me going up against the New York Giants, and I'm willing to chase his 10 targets that he received last week, although he only caught 4 of them for like 30 yards, but the 10 targets was promising. Still, obviously, I am concerned about him. He's been very hot and cold on the entirety of the season, and it's not really a high upside matchup for the New York Giants. In fact, it's a poor tight end matchup, so those are my concerns. But still, because of those 10 targets, I'm playing him if I don't have anybody higher than this in my available to me on my team. And I will say this is the one guy here that I am okay if you want to trust him over Dallas Goedert. I won't fight you on that, but it is a terrible tight end matchup for him going up against Cleveland. Worse tight end matchup than it is for Dallas Goedert against the Giants. Then Taysom Hill going up against the Los Angeles Rams, my tight end 15, and he is the bane of my existence. So this is where I rank him. Then we've got Kyle Pitts in at tight end 16, and I don't rank him at 15 because he's the bane of my existence. Just saying, he's the bane of my existence. That is my analysis on him. Kyle Pitts, tight end 16 here this week, and he has consistently been mediocre throughout the entirety of the season, and maybe Taylor Heineke can give him a little bit of pop, get him past mediocre this week, but he's been all right for you. Tucker Kraft, Hunter Henry, I am happy to play either one of these this week if you wish to. Tucker Kraft, I believe, is your floor play, maybe not offering a whole lot of upside, and of course, if Luke Musgrave returns, we will be downgrading Tucker Kraft, but I won't be surprised if we see a little bit more 2 tight end sets, and maybe Luke Musgrave just returning. Tucker Kraft still might have an above average amount of usage, at least compared to when earlier on in the season when Luke Musgrave was healthy. Hunter Henry here is going to be your ceiling shot, and will of course go up ahead of Tucker Kraft if Luke Musgrave returns this week. And I think that's all that I'm going to talk about, but we do have another tier cutoff here, I believe. Yes, we do. And so I'll just quick read those off. My tight end 19 is Pat Freiermuth, followed by Gerald Everett, Tyler Conklin, Logan Thomas, Cade Otton, Tanner Hudson, Jonnu Smith, Michael Mayer, Chigo Ziamokankwo, Tyler Higbee, and Juwan Johnson. All options that, thrown out there. I think there's a decent chance you could get something as good of a chance as anybody. I start to really get concerned once we get down to the Dawson Knox territory. At that point, just don't start them over any of these guys, that's for sure. If you want to go out on some sort of, gut feeling with some of these guys in the tier above this last tier here, go right ahead, but not there. Obviously, Luke Musgrave not ranked, but I've got him ready to be ranked, and surprisingly, he actually does not fare quite as well in the projections as Tucker Kraft does. Now, let's move on to but Tucker Kraft is boosted up to as if Luke Musgrave is not playing, just to make that clear. As far as goodbyes go, everyone is going to be going for Trey McBride, rightfully so, this week in DFS plays, and David Njoku will also be, I'm sure, be heavily used, and also rightfully so, or rightfully so. But Evan Ingram could stack up the catches this week up against Tampa Bay, yes. Could stack up the catches in the full PPR format that DraftKings is and offer you some sort of contrarian playness as well. So you're going to get a couple contrarian plays here. And he's going to cost you $5,400. He's priced right between the two, Trey McBride and David Njoku. In the discount bin, I'm going to give you the name Cade Otton at $3,300. He's in a good matchup. I think we've probably tried him a couple of times. It hasn't worked, I don't believe, when we tried him earlier in the season. But we're going to give him one more shot here late in the season. And for a contrarian play at $5,200 is Dalton Kincaid. And I've also got Travis Kelce at $7,500. Both guys who I think will probably get ignored this week by many, due to the matchup, due to recent performances, etc. So, matchup for Kelce. I think Dalton Kincaid's actually in a decent matchup, so he might be less of a contrarian play to some extent. But either way, I like both of them if you're trying to differentiate your lineup. That is it this week for the quarterbacks, for the tight ends. Of course, the wide receivers will come out later today. Running backs will come out tomorrow morning. I will be live 2 hours prior to kickoff for the Thursday night game. And Saturday, I'll be live 2 hours prior to kickoff for the Saturday game. And then Sunday, I'll be live 3 hours prior to kickoff for that game. Thank you very, very much. Peace out.